So we're going to be picking up where Emma left off to some degree. What I'm showing you guys right here is, some quantitative point data, right? So you can imagine that these points are representing wells for drinking water, and those numbers are, toxins in the wells measured in ppm, which are parts per million. And so the information is there, right? I would argue that it's maybe not the best way to convey this information through those text labels. Using different types of symbology to convey that information may be more helpful. In this middle one, you've got 3 different categories of circle size and circle color, or shades of gray in this black and white. So I would argue that that's certainly an improvement over what we see just with the numbers above, but the one at the bottom may be even more powerful, right? And the one at the bottom is actually bringing in some kind of, symbology that's saying, at some kind of federal threshold, a skull and crossbones indicating that, you're going to die if you drink the water, right? It's a more powerful type of way of communicating. And this idea of, using different symbols beyond, dots or stars or other things, it can be very effective. It also can be really cluttering, right? So you got to think about that. So if it's just an occasional thing and it really has your eye jump out, it can be quite a good thing to do. If it's too sort of, is a cute idea, but in reality just makes a map look all cluttered and, hard to understand, in practice, it may not turn out the best way. You can do the same kind of thing with line data. And so this is, measurements of vehicle speeds over the posted speed limit. And so if the numbers are high, those might be areas where you might want to have, set up speed traps or something to try to slow people down. If the numbers are low, maybe you don't need to really patrol those streets very much. But again, this idea of just showing the raw numbers is really not that efficient or effective. Whereas if you instead convey it with, some type of thickness of line, for example, and or color, right? So color is another, in this black and white example, we're not really seeing this, but the bottom one in particular, I think, is quite helpful, right? It very quickly conveys, if you are, you're a police department and you've got a GIS team and they make the map at the top versus a map at the bottom, the one at the bottom is going to be much more clear about, where to send your patrol folks, right? And so again, trying to do this in a very efficient, effective, simple way that's not simplistic is usually where you want to be sort of heading your design efforts towards. So again, hopefully from last time, if you recall, talking about some of these different design principles: clear visual hierarchy, simplicity, legibility, consistency and such. And I was just showing a few things about legibility and simplicity. But good composition is definitely, something to spend some time considering. If the map doesn't have good composition, even if you're not sort of consciously recognizing those things, like things are off a little bit or such, it just will look, the sense that you'll get as the viewer will be, this is amateurish, this is sort of jarring, this is sort of, not making me, feel very, pleased and centered inside, right? So having some idea about good composition is well worth it. And again, all these examples are from this book, Krieger and Wood from 2011. But this first idea about visual arrangement, you can think about it as the map design elements, or the map elements. People read them following some kind of a path. And in the one with the unhappy smiley face, your eyes are sort of jumping around the page back and forth in sort of a zigzag pattern. Whereas in the one on the right, it's sort of, in general, you're sort of working your way down the page from the left to the right, which is how we read in English. In a different language, maybe it would be a different situation. Another thing to consider is how the elements are where the visual center is of the map, and it's not right in the middle of the page. Actually, it's above that. It's actually above the actual center. And so the one on the right is showing you that, or what the intuition is, that this one just feels a little bit more balanced. It feels a little bit more professional. The one on the left is just feeling a little bit off balance. And again, on this idea of balance, in terms of how the elements are laid out, The one on the left is off balance. Everything is left justified, and it's sort of, just feeling like it's tilting over to the side. The one on the right is perfectly symmetrical, and that, that's all right. It also is, and there'll be an example of this in a second, it also is a little bit kind of stodgy, a little bit conservative, a little bit boring. And so I think that there's some, interplay in between these two, between being totally off balance to being totally symmetrical. If you arrange your elements in a way which is makes sense, you'll definitely have a better outcome. And that's what's shown actually on the bottom a little bit here. This idea about sort of, a little bit of asymmetry there is not the end of the world. Yeah, and so again, this is basically showing if it's perfectly symmetrical, it's fine. If you are a little bit off center, but things are arranged in a way that makes sense, and there are, clean sight lines, that can actually be quite pleasing as well. But when things are just sort of thrown there and there's no arrangement or thought to, how things match up, which is shown in this sort of middle category with all these sort of grid lines all over the place, that is not good design, right? And that definitely leads to a feeling of this thing was just thrown together at the last minute, and it's really not a pleasant thing to look at. And it takes away from whatever it is you're trying to convey with your figure, right? Because people get distracted by, this is offset, it just doesn't feel exactly right. So not that I want you guys to be OCD and everything has to be exactly perfect, but you definitely at least want to consider these different elements. I'm not sure how much Emma spoke about map color. I think she did share some different examples. And this is showing hue, value, and intensity. But the idea of hue, differences in color, those are good for categorical data. They're not really good for quantitative data, right? There's nothing to say that orange is better or more than yellow per se, right? Colors also have, symbolic meaning. So blue in, USGS topo maps, it often means water. It can also mean, sort of cool things, deep things. Green often means vegetation. But there's also cultural connotations for these colors as well. So, red symbolizing sort of, communism, right? Bolsheviks, communist parties, and other things. In India, it means purity, right? So purple is death and crucifixion in Europe. Royalty in Hawaii and other places, right? So there are definitely important cultural connotations to these colors that, depending on the use of the map, you should be aware of. Yeah, black, fascists, anarchists, and other extremists in the Western world means other things too. And map composition, high contrast maps. What we see is a white background with black text, but you can also make black background with white text if you're trying to make those sort of strong, contrast colors. And those can be quite powerful and quite helpful. And the interaction between the different colors that you see on the map is at least something to be aware of. So for this set of colors here in the left, you've got this sort of yellow and green. Those two dots in the middle, they're actually the same color, but the one in the left in the yellow, it looks a little bit different, right? And it's because the contrast between the sort of background colors. And this can go the other way too. So this is showing the sort of pink and green. It, to my eyes at least, those little squares in the middle, they look to be about the same color. But in reality, they're not, right? In reality, those two colors it is a pink and it is a green. And again, I don't know how your eyes are seeing this, if you think they're the same color or not, but they are different colors. And so the interplay between the different background colors and the other things are important when you're choosing legends and you're choosing gradations of colors, to at least consider these different types of color interactions. This is a map. This is not the map that I'm going to have you guys do the map critique exercise on, but it is a This is a map I want you guys to take a look at. And I'm gonna just call on somebody. What a terrible thing he's gonna do. All right, unless I get a ball, I'm just gonna call on somebody. Let's see, let's make this a little bit more interesting. And if you don't have the internet connection, I understand, but Julia Rose. Oh, I got her. Julia Rose. All right. Julia Rose, what do you think about this map? Do you see any issues with this map? Let me put it that way.
Well, sorry. Well, first off, we're definitely missing a title for the map there. Not exactly sure. Let me zoom in. It says any apple. So maybe the legend could also be a little bit more specific to match the title. It needs a border or a neat line. That would really help. It's kind of odd that it's in the center too, instead of like off to the left. And then there's no scale, there's no north arrow. And then I guess the colors are okay for me. I don't know, what do you guys think?
Thank you for getting us started, Julia Rose. I appreciate it. So you said the colors are okay for you, and that's actually a really that's a nice segue comment, because the colors in here are actually not helpful for a pretty good portion of the population. So there's a lot of folks that are colorblind, right? Red-green colorblind, and it's about 3% of females and 8% of males. I don't know if anybody in this class is colorblind. You don't have to say if you are, but you know, about 8% of males, 3% of females. You're talking about getting a fairly significant portion of the population that is red-green colorblind, and for those folks, it would be incredibly hard for them to see differences between these colors. Red and green are often colors that you see very commonly used in maps. That red is, you know, danger or bad, or you know, too much, and green is good. You often see that, but again, it's problematic for these a significant number of folks who are red-green colorblind. So if you think about the accessibility of the map, right, and you're only using a red-green scheme, you're not making the map accessible to folks. It's certainly not accessible to blind folks, but barring blind folks, and you can make tactile maps, and they have these, which are super cool. They have other maps that you have as you move your cursor around, like, you know, the noise changes, right? And so that gives you a sense about, you know, these spatial differences. But I pay attention to this. So when you guys are making maps in the future, if you submit a map and it's got a red-green, you know, symbology, I'm going to ding you on that, because it's not going to be accessible to folks who are red-green colorblind. Okay, so just sort of a, you know, word of warning about this in the future. Julia Rose did a great job talking about some of the other issues with this one. You know, she mentioned the idea of a north arrow. When you see something which is quite you know, common, almost anybody who would see this map would know that this is a map of the continental United States. In that situation, if it is so common and it's kind of understood, right, that north is up, and so a north arrow in this situation that is lacking is not the end of the world, but indeed it could be added. A legend certainly could be added. Again, it gets to what is the purpose of the map. You know, what's going on with these polygons? Like, those aren't counties. Like, I don't know what is going on with these things, right? So there's a lot that's just not known about this map. And one other point I'll make here is about the map projection, or lack of a map projection. So this is an unprojected map, meaning that it's just latitude, longitude, you know, flat across. It's got some of the distortions that Emma was maybe talking about. And if we were to actually project this, it would look much more pleasing to our eyes. And I'll talk about map projections in a bit later. But right on, yeah, good job, Julia. And so that was a good kind of warm up for the next exercise here, which is going to start in a second. Before we get to that, this is a winner from the 2012 North American Cartographic Information Society Student Poster Competition winner. They have a competition every year, and maybe if you guys are, you know, make some beautiful maps, you could submit, and who knows, maybe you could win. But this is from a student. It's just gorgeous, right? Just the amount of care and attention to detail that they put into this map is fantastic. I mean, just the legend, right? The legend itself is just beautiful, right? The person who made this map really did a nice job, I think. Again, you've got this, you know, these sort of faint contour lines in the background there. It's just really nice. If you look at the, I think Emma was maybe getting to this idea about legibility and the idea about there's, you know, break lines and the contour lines, so you can see all these different letters and such. Really nice. So again, thinking about, you know, map design and these cartographic concepts, understand the user requirements, considering the display format is important, but this idea about a clear visual hierarchy. We've got this sort of shaded hillshade relief map in the background with colors by depth. And so, but it's kind of, you know, a little, it's faded in the background, right? And then we got these contour lines over top. But it gives this sort of three-dimensional nature to the map, that it's simple, that it's clean, that it's legible, it's consistent, and that there's a nice, good composition to it. So these are the elements I want you guys to wrestle with. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to break you guys up into small groups, into La Lima breakout rooms, and you're going to do a map critique using this map that you're seeing right here. And I'm going to throw that, if I can, into the chat to everybody. And I want to make sure everybody gets this. I'm gonna put that map in the chat. So hopefully you guys can, you know, click on that guy in the chat and it will bring up a PDF that you can have on your computer. Can I get thumbs up from folks that has worked? Okay, great. I'm seeing that it's coming to some different folks. Fantastic. And then I'm going to stop sharing here in a second. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to randomly put you guys into small groups and breakout rooms. Everybody gets a copy of the map to refer to and look at. One person in the group, I don't care who, but one person in the group is, you work it out, is going to be the note taker. And they're going to fill out a Google form that I'm going to share the link with you guys about that. And the Google form will ask for responses. You only need to do one Google form submission per group. Okay, so not everybody need, you know, you're a group of 4 people or 3 people, only one person, and in there you'll say the different names of the group members. I'm going to ask you guys names of, you know, questions about this map for you guys to respond to. Okay, and so for the rest of the lecture, that's what I'd like, lecture time, that's what I'd like you guys to work on. And then once you're done, you know, please, you know, talk about it, think about it, because this is a useful exercise. Don't just rush through it to sort of get done in 5 minutes. Like, it's worth talking about and thinking about these different things. But then once you complete that, then you're good for the day. You know, you can hit submit on that Google form and good to go. I'll still be in the main room. If you guys have any questions or issues, let me know. So I'll be kind of hanging out. But that's the plan for the rest of the class time. Okay. So let me stop sharing, and then I'll send that Google form link out. And again, only one person per group needs to submit. So hopefully you guys now, everybody's got a copy of the map, and you don't know who will be the person. So everybody at least maybe can, you know, click that open to start before I put you in the breakout rooms. And then once you're in there, you can decide who's actually going to fill it out. Okay, so let me stop recording.